our minister here to say. If I were a member of the transgender community, I would feel trivialized, sexualized, objectified if my sexual identity were commodified as just a form of entertainment in the tourism industry. Ladies and gentlemen, today as a Prime Minister, I'm going to tell you, I'll be telling you how the commodification of the transgender community harms, first of all, the transgender community, and second of all, how the funds that are channeled towards making this industry successful should instead be channeled towards improving the lives of the transgender people. I'd like to move on to my first point. I'm going to tell you how it first harms the transgender community. You see, if transgender tourism becomes a popular marketing tool for that country, you have to realize that the demand will increase for these transgender people. But you see, first evidence, when there are people, real people struggling with their sexual identity, and if they want to come out, they are seen as sexualized objects of entertainment. And if the demand increases for this market, what happens is that people who are not real transgenders, but instead people looking for income, men just dressing up as women, will flood into this market because there is an opportunity to actually to earn an income there. And if these people are going to flood into the market, this means that the real transgender, this doesn't really help the transgender community, because when there is a demand and the demand increases, what happens is that unauthentic people who are not really transgenders will eventually dominate the market. So this does not help the transgender community. And you see, we're not saying that we don't want, the thing is, this may seem as having transgender travel may mean that transgender people are allowed to congregate. But no, we're not saying that we're not allowing the transgender people to congregate if we are regretting this notion. However, you see, if they are congregating in an entertainment form, this will attach a stigma to the transgender community. And when there is a stigma attached, this will actually harm the community because they will be, and they're just looked down as objects of entertainment. And if there is a sort of notion that the transgender people will ultimately make it into the entertainment industry for tourism purposes, we think that this will harm the transgender community. And because we believe that we need a support system, and we believe that a support system is important for this transgender community. However, we're saying that this type of nightlife congregation where they are meeting together to perform is not a healthy form of congregation for the transgender community, because this means that citizens will have this sort of stigma attached to that group, that all they are good for is entertainment. Moving on to my second point. In status quo today, what is happening is that the transgender people are not living lives just like the rest of us. Most of the time, they are looked down upon by society because of their sexual orientation. But the thing is, if there is an entertainment industry and a demand for transgender people, what happens is that the funds will be channeled towards them for lighting, for makeup, for costumes. But in status quo today, there are larger issues at hand. In the US, which is LGBT-friendly community, 68% of homeless LGBT youth were kicked out of their homes because they are not accepted by their families. Having these nightclubs which support them, which actually feature these transgender people, we are not actually cultivating acceptance into the community. But before that, sir.
Ma'am, in many in countries such as Thailand, where transgender tourism is extremely popular, the congregation of transgenders is generally quite legitimate. So how what's your comment on this?
The congregation of, they are actually a legitimate congregation, yes, because they are recognized by the government and recognized by the community. But you see, when it is very easy to think of Thailand as a transgender nation because a lot of people flock to Thailand because of the transgender market. However, if you are an employer, right, and if your prospective employee is a transgender, your first thought would be that, oh, he or she belongs in the nightclub, in an entertainment industry. Therefore, people are less accepting of these transgender people, as they already have a stigma attached that they will eventually end up in these nightclubs, and that's the only outlet for them. And as I was saying just now, there is a large proportion of transgender homeless people, and that's a problem that needs to be solved before you come to propagating transgender as an entertainment industry. Because before we can empower them through the entertainment industry, we need to empower them from the education. They need to have funds so that they can survive. Because if they're out in the streets and they don't have the right resources, they won't be able to remove the stigma that they will ultimately end up in the entertainment industry. And what we're saying is that we want to give these transgender people a hope for the future, that their life is not going to end up, and their future is not set in stone, that they will end up in the tourism entertainment industry. We're saying that what we do is, what we hope is trans people can actually come out of that stigmatization that they are in, and that they will begin to accept themselves as who they are and not just sexual objects. And with that, I end.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I invite the opposition here. Not giving these individuals the ability to have that avenue is not giving them the ability to be accepted at all. We think that any form of avenue to make sure that they have a voice to protect, even if it's with a form of commodification, is a good way to make sure that at least you're sending a form of rhetoric that these are people, these are human beings, and not simply animals that you can throw away or look down. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here. Couple of battles, and then I'm going to answer two questions. Number one, what is it going to justify? Number two, how commodification helps. But firstly, let's really look at the side of government. We want to tell you how we want to request this solution. But firstly, when we want to request something, we think that the basic idea is that it should be having tangible power. Because the idea that they want to bring about objectification, it occurs in all other industries as well. Therefore, we think that certain people even do consent to that form of objectification. We think that as long as you have that form of consent, therefore any form of regret from their side does what stand. We think that the idea of objectification is subjective towards individuals, therefore nothing legit on their side. But secondly, when you want to regret something, you should always tell us how you are making a counterpart to get the form of acceptance you want. Something they never really told us. Because the only thing they're doing is shutting off a form of industry, is shutting off a form of avenue for these transgender people to come out and to tell people who they really are. And the only thing they're doing is making sure that these people are systematically oppressed even more. Because they don't have any other way to propagate themselves and tell people that this is the individuals that I really am. Now, we get the rebuttals. Firstly, we want to tell you how directly tourism will always be entertainment. We think that the idea of tourism isn't necessarily entertainment or way, because there are other forms of varieties of tourism, such as heritage sites, which are actually not entertainment. We think of the comparativity. We think that when you have tourism in form of transgender, this is also in a way helps people to learn about these transgender people. Because in the first place, when you want to commodify, to commercialize, you necessarily put in good things about transgender, Because when you want to draw in money and when you want people to be attracted to what you're trying to sell, this is where people do say good things about you and they propagate it and they tell people, they sell that idea. We think that selling the idea is great. Secondly, we want to talk to you about how people will necessarily pay just to get the money. Then we just see the government will regulate and put in to make sure that everyone has authentic transgenders. Not a big problem. But lastly, we want to tell you how there's a better support system on their side. We think what sort of support system are you trying to talk about? Comparatively, on our side, it's better because you have a proper industry with government regulations and people making sure that these transgender people are protected and not discriminated. You give them a proper avenue and you give them a proper way to make sure that they can get money and they can get the funds that they necessarily need. That was the rebuttals. First question, why is it morally justified for us to consume? Firstly, let's look at the idea of commodification. A, we think that commodification happens all the time, even within things that we view extremely holy, such as culture, religious sites, goods, and all those sort of things. Therefore, we think that the idea that people can make money from this doesn't necessarily mean it's always bad. Therefore, any form of money that you can take and you can fuel it back to the transgender community is very much celebrated. So we tell you that our government does not have any problem with that. But secondly, we also tell you that the commodification of the transgender community also means a form of avenue of expression. Because at the very least, even if it is within those nightclubs, even if it is within those secret places, at the very least they are able to open up to people, even if it's not within their own country. There is a crowd that won't necessarily listen to them and won't hold dear to what they feel is good. Therefore, we think that this is where they can make relations with people who don't want to make relations. Let's say like I'm a Thai person and I go in and I'm transgender. This is why people who are Thai do not want to talk to me, but actually someone who's like English who want to talk to me. Therefore, that form of happiness is necessarily good. Because at the very least, I have someone to talk to and someone who would necessarily accept it. The conclusion to this is that the state should always endorse any means of giving people an avenue and any means of making sure people feel happier and have a form of way to live their life. Sure.
So are you conceding to the fact that this transgender commodification does not actually cultivate acceptance within their own community, but only in the foreign community?
But we think that when the foreign communities accept them, this is where it will become pressure upon the community within the country to accept them as well. This is where the external pressure comes for you to make sure that you accept transgenders. This is also something that happens in countries like Uganda, which United States necessarily does intervene and tells them you should accept gays and you should not kill them. We think the same principle applies, but people from the outer nation will tell you to appreciate them more. This is why people from the inside will tumble down and have a better form of acceptance. Something that we never do on their side. But secondly, I'm going to argue to you how commodification helps. Firstly, we think that this idea of commodification on the basic principle is the celebration of transgender communities. Because when we talk about community, it means the country is already okay with it. Now it's just time to change the perception of people on the ground. Therefore, this is the way how people who are within the community is going to propagate the ideas that transgender people are good and transgender people should be accepted. Therefore, you should go and see them. This is necessarily very important because the sacralization of ideologies on their side is necessarily bigoted and very much conservative. Therefore, any form of way to fight those ideologies is very much celebrated. Without these commodities, without people fighting, even if it is to get the money, it's going to help them. Without all of this, they will never be accepted. Because the idea that the very fact that these states actually do get a job, we think is good. Because comparatively, you see this, they don't get it, they're just treated like animals. Comparatively, on our side, we do not have any form of sacralization of ideologies. But let's talk about how this fuels money in the transgender community. What I want to talk to you about how they would suddenly fund the transgender community, we think that idea is very much stupid because who's going to fund the community when everyone's conservative? Therefore, this is the form of idea where you get international parties to pay for that tourism. Therefore, there is money that we can fuel back into the transgender community. We think that any form of money or any form of source is great because we want to help these people mobilize. Because in serious people, they're not getting jobs, they're not getting education for really stupid reasons, such as you queer and such as you do not fit in. Therefore, any form of money that can help, that can bring them and mobilize them would be very much celebrated. So the conclusion is this: we agree that on our side, they might feel a bit objectified and whatnot, But we think that the idea in the long run, where you have a better, where you are more stable, thank you. Thank you very much.
Firstly, the start of my debate is I have a rebuttal to make, which is consent in her speech, in Prime Minister's little opposition speech, is that the consent in transgender people giving into joining the entertainment industry. I believe that the consent in this case is corrupted because they're coerced. Because as my Prime Minister has said, many transgender people do not get opportunity, good proper jobs. Their employers will turn them down, and also that many transgender people live in poor conditions and they are homeless. That's why I believe that her argument on consent is illegitimate, because people are coerced into this because they do not have the money to do it, money to get a proper life, and also, firstly, moving on to my points. Firstly, is the hate crime that this entertainment industry will bring in. Because if most of the transgender people start becoming part of the entertainment industry, this makes it easier for bigger or religious groups, extremist groups to target them. This would end up bringing up more discrimination onto them, because people only see them as like workers who show off their bodies for entertainment of other people. Their social status in the community will definitely fall, and this will bring on much more hate crime and therefore concentrate them into a central location. It makes them easier to be targeted by these sorts of groups. And also, ultimately, my main point is that my second point, and also main point, is that this making this transgender people into a commodity will end up in the end, it will not work for the LGBT movement, because this will make it harder for LGBT or trans people to obtain better civil rights. Because LGBT movement right now, LGBT people right now, in most part of the world, do not have proper rights, such as jobs, or maybe attaining proper housing, or getting good jobs, rather compared to her jobs, which is working in nightclub for entertainment of other men. Well, why I'm talking about good jobs is that maybe becoming a politician, becoming a proper lawyer, doctor, because in our history, we have never seen a transgender politician. Transgender person who becomes a CEO of any big sort of company at all. Just want to say that this makes, and also moving on about how this makes it harder for LGBT people to obtain better rights. Because first, on one of the rights that LGBTs are fighting for, which is marriage. If people think that they are only for entertainment, this illegitimizes the public perception that LGBT people need marriage at all. Because if they are working all the time as part of the entertainment industry, people will think that these people don't need marriage. They're only here for the appeal, is everything about appearance. And also, following on, is that this will give right-wing politicians ammunition to delegitimize the LGBT community. For example, Donald Trump, if it is known that many LGBT people, transgender people, are working in this kind of entertainment industry, don't politician, right politician like Donald Trump will say that all LGBT people are all after money, they're all after, not after good relationships, I mean long-standing relationships where you have partners, marriage, all kinds of things. He would discredit them and say that transgender people only do it for money and so on. And my next point is that for
LGBT people only don't get good jobs anyway. Therefore, taking away any form of avenue is going to put them on. How does that sit up?
Okay, let's say you take away this avenue. LGBT people, okay, comparing the alternatives in this debate now. Your side say that if my side will take away their jobs, and your side say that you will give them jobs by having this thing. I believe that in the long term, if the LGBT movement manages to push through and gets like proper traction, I believe that one day transgender people can hold proper jobs, become president or whatever. And that's why relating back to my second point, which is that having these people, having transgender people working in establishments like this will only serve to bring bad news on the LGBT community overall. And also, third and last point, okay, compare outcomes finally. Okay. Now, outside believe that LGBT rights can finally improve if we discourage them from joining this entertainment establishment to sell off their looks and whatnot. And also, I believe that ultimately, in the long run, it will improve standard of living as more and more people realizes that these people really do have a need for proper welfare that the government does not provide for LGBT people. Only non-profit organizations help the LGBT people. And ultimately, they'll get better jobs, they'll live an overly better life. But on the opposition side, LGBT people cannot get proper social mobility because they because the LGBT movement loses support because of this. And then transgender people especially, they only work in entertainment industries forever, which is, I'm pretty sure, doesn't pay that well. And lastly, LGBT people are objectified, seen as entertainment. Therefore, I believe that government's case is way better.
Transgender people can't even go to toilet in peace, and people give them looks or even condemn them outright. Things like these are what makes them feel segregated. They're already denied job interviews and education, and they're stuck. And commodification might just be a way out, and you're denying their right for that too. Trans communities are denied a lot of things, and you're grabbing every opportunity to make their lives more available. So, firstly, I'd like to start from what goes. They try to tell you about consent, right? But on our side, at least we're giving them their ability, their job opportunity, which your side ultimately denies. They try to tell you how their consent is legitimate, but we tell you at least to give them the ability to choose. Secondly, they try to tell you how religious groups would discriminate against transgender community members, or even legitimize marriage. Well, we believe that religious groups are already
discriminating them bad enough, and at least we have an avenue for them to work, compared to your side, which doesn't at all. And thirdly, they also try to tell you how your side brings better long-term effects. But we want to counter the Asian harm now. We not only to tolerate another transgender being killed, knowing that that could have been avoided otherwise. So, firstly, I'd like to talk about how transgenders would feel more accepted, right? Okay, transgender communities face discrimination every day of their lives. Commodification, as I said before, not just being done within a home, it might be there as a still it's comparative. And when you see people start meeting transgenders and getting to do them like that, this visual effect gives a big impact to society. Just being able to see people accepting them in daily life, it would lead to progression in their acceptance. Okay, both sides want to help with their community in terms of welfare, but at least on our side, but comparatively on our side, we have this simultaneously will foster acceptance. Thank you. Secondly, commodification will also help transgender communities to be more accepted. So when conservative societies see outside people embracing transgender communities, it brings pressure. What can we say? So we're not asking conservatives to become the roles. We just want them to accept transgenders. We want discrimination to stop. We're not okay with them being killed, with them being denied job interviews, regardless of meritocracy. Right? So transgender in Uganda have powers where they are killed and being terminated. Right? So we're not willing to just condone all this discrimination acts, knowing that it could have been prevented otherwise. So so they try to tell you how people would. They try to tell you how how this would backfire and stigmatization will appear. But then again, I'll tell you that at least we're giving them the avenue to. We're giving them a chance to work. So I think currently the success of transgender communities is progressing too slowly, and we're not willing to risk another life, like I said before. We're not willing to endure any more discrimination that could have been avoided otherwise. So the moment we see an avenue, then we should take advantage of it. Thank you. With that, I close.
The transgender community's fight to be accepted is only available to be accessed at the point in which these individuals are deemed as equals and deemed as human beings. We think there's a huge problem at the point in which they are merely objects that we use to get money and nothing more. Before moving on to my extension to today's debate, which is firstly why towards the trans community, secondly the dehumanization of transgender individuals, and thirdly of the facade of oppression that you create. Let's show you the difference between opening and closing. Because opening told you about this idea of objectification commodification, and this whole influx of non-authentic transgender individuals, right? But we will be talking about drawing the links as to the dehumanization of these individuals and why especially it's very bad for the transgender community as a whole. Before that, a few responses. Because opening up came up here and told you that this is the only avenue for them to find happiness. Couple of problems with this, right? Firstly, that assumes that the individuals that come to these tourism industries are looking to make friendships and looking to make bonds with these individuals. We think that's an outright lie. The reason why they travel to these places is because we need to understand the nature of commodification and tourism as a whole. These individuals are here to look at something unique, to look at something foreign that they have never seen before. They are here not to form bonds with you or to give you happiness, but to look at how weird you are, and to look at how horrible you are, and to look at how you're not a human being. We think this is something that we can never stand for. Then we think the whole idea of you getting happiness from these bonds never will happen anyway. Because even if they wanted to make friends, they would have done it in like their own homeland, right? They wouldn't travel to another country just so they could make friends. We don't think this really makes sense. There's no happiness garden whatsoever ever. But let's look at the comparative and let's find it. Even if somehow individuals get some form of happiness from making bonds with these individuals that most probably will happen, we think the comparative of them being dehumanized is far worse. Because not only does making friends assume people are okay with the transgender community as a whole, which means it's very unlikely, but on a scale, we think there is more happiness on the outside of the house. This will get explained further on, but roughly, we think considering that individuals are forced to internalize hate every time they walk up on stage, and considering that individuals are coerced into joining these industries to begin with, we don't think it's legitimate. On a scale, pushing these individuals out of horrible lives where they continuously internalize the fact that they are different and that their only purpose in life is to be an object that some heterosexual male can gain pleasure from. We don't think this is the life we want them to live, and it's not fair for these individuals. We rather push them out of this fear of trauma. Sit down and accept one another. But secondly, right, on this idea of having an avenue. First, we think they create a facade of progression. How so? Because we think the point in which they use for the tourism industry is also the point in which you perpetuate the stereotype that everything in that country is perfectly fine, and that's the exact reason that they can be commodified. We think that's a lie. Even in Thailand itself, where the nature of lady boys and using them as commodification is so widespread, the discrimination towards these individuals are horrible. They are not allowed to go into the bathrooms that they identify as. They are constantly discriminated in the street. So we don't think there is any progression from this commodification. Because if it's true that commodification brought this much progress, they needed to defend the fact that transgender individuals all around the world don't have that progress yet. Because if it were to happen, it would have happened 100 years ago, guys. It hasn't happened. We think we create a facade of progression where individuals think that what's going on now is perfectly fine, and the situation in these areas are perfectly fine. Because even in that country, they are viewed as nothing more as a tourism attraction. I don't have to cater to them. I don't have to engage in political discourse as we are right, because they are nothing more than a tourist attraction. We really rather do things like LGBT rallies where there's no public scrutiny in these areas to begin with. We think that's way better. But what's the comparative? We think the comparative is simple. On the outside of the house, we force governments to directly engage with these communities, and to the point at which they are not just shoved to a side and forced to coerce into doing a certain job. At the very least, there is some form of discourse created, and at the point at which we don't place the stigma that the only job that we can truly do is being commodified and being in a nightclub performing, right? We think you make anti-discrimination laws, and these are the kinds of things that we would fight for. The point is that all governments to directly engage the transgender community. But first extension is how it's better for the trans community as a whole. Because the first thing that we think, like a lot of analysis is what the transgender communities fight actually is. Or sit down. First, we think it's a fight to be accepted, right? Whether it's in Florida, it's a bathroom bill, or whether it's just generally in society to be seen as a normal individual and not weird. The purpose of tourism directly goes against that, right? It's the first thing, the reason why individuals go for tourism is to see something unique and is to see something different. That means it's literally telling you that you are some weird object that I should be looking at, and it's fun to look at you because you're so foreign. But the second more pernicious subconscious message is that you see something that you're not going to get at home. That means I'm never going to be able to see a transgender individual in my own homeland and in my own country. So what do you now do? to perpetuate the stereotype that they are different as equal. Because you use them for tourism, whereby you want them to be seen as something different, and that's the whole reason why individuals flock to these areas, and therefore you perpetuate that stereotype. Because it's not just in terms of the way in which individuals advertise these kinds of things, whereby you perpetuate this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you're never going to get to see these individuals again. But it's also in regards to the subconscious feeling that this is a foreign thing as a whole. What are the outcomes of this? I think there are a couple of outcomes. First, you feel like you're not part of the fight for transgender individuals because it's happening in another country, which you think is horrible. But B, you think you will never accept that you're complicit in the bigotry, right? You're in the fight for transgender rights in your own place. But C, it makes you feel like they are not there in your home and you don't have to fight for them anyway. But the second level, right, in terms of the stripping of humanity, because the nature of commodification is that you don't consent and then you're forced into being dehumanized for money. But the more pernicious harm is that it empowers the power dynamic that transgender individuals will forever be the slaves and will forever be the object of every single heterosexual individual out there. Because you empower that power dynamic, and that means they will never be able to break out of that sphere. You make it worse for the trans community at the point in which they internalize that hate. Because you think that they are an object and you strip their humanity as a whole. We think this is a horrible, horrible thing that we will never stand for. At the point in which you empower the power dynamic, that they are horrible individuals and they are nothing more than objects that create this. For all these reasons, I'm very proud of to.
So before I move into my extension of the case on O, I'm going to summarize a bit of what OG and CG has come out with. So OG has came up with four main arguments, which is on the stigmatization of the trans community, the function of the academic community, the hate crime conceptualized, and then becomes hard to get civil rights. While OG came up to us and extended on the point of the stigmatization of the trans community and of how it brings them, it puts them further back and forward. So before I move on to my extension, I'm going to give a few rebuttals. So, on the case of OG, so on the case of OG, they came up and told us four main arguments. However, I think that the main clashes are on, first of all, whether funds reach how funds shall the community, why or how they can centralize at all, and on whether it really does become harder to get civil rights if this does happen. So, we see that there's an issue with how funds shall the community. So let's make a parallel. If you didn't have this whole trans tourism industry in the first place, what ends up happening is that the trans people on the ground are unable to earn money normally because both sides have acknowledged and conceded that for a trans person, life is horrible. It is really hard to get a job in the first place, to make money, to be able to earn enough money to support yourself with your basic needs. We see that even if you have to resort to sex tourism to earn money, we think that that is a better alternative because at the very least, you are able to afford the things you need to get by day to day. And this is the worst case scenario. So we think that if you propagate the trans tourism industry, it becomes a big industry within your company, within your country, that actually becomes a better off thing. Because if the government can see that this is a valuable industry to the nation, that it legitimizes the industry and it becomes easier for the government to support the trans people because they're citizens, and because industry is seen as something that is beneficial towards the country. Thus, trans people can be further propagated as can receive more rights and can be fought for better. On the case of hate crime centralized, we think that hate crime happens anyway, regardless of whether you have a trans tourism industry or not. These trans people are still going to be seen as second, third-class citizens compared to everyone else. We think that religious societies are still going to discriminate them on either side. On our side, however, we think that it's better because at the very least, they have the ability and the finances to survive, and with those finances, they can propagate themselves further as being normal citizens. And finally, on the case of how to get civil rights, I'll elaborate on that in my extension. Yes.
To respond on the centralizing of hate crime, I mean like Orlando hate club shooting and those kind of stuff. Like it's easier to like get targeted.
Okay, so we acknowledge that yes, it becomes easier physically, but we think that once tourism, tourism industry is seen as more legitimate, then governments can put more regulation into ensuring that these kind of places are better defended against cases like those. So the main point I came up from CG will be integrated into my main extension. So we can all agree on one thing, and that is that all of us want a better living condition for the trans society. However, it is important to note the different metrics of which we can consider that the trans society is better off. For example, having more rights, better living standards, higher income, etc., etc. We acknowledge that the trans tourism industry isn't necessarily clean. It does include things like sex tourism, and it does include things like prostitution. But we think that this can be a worthwhile trade-off. So I think there are two main questions this way. First of all, who makes the lives of trans people better? And second of all, is commodification a worthwhile trade-off for more acceptance? So who makes the life of a trans person better? So on the side of government, you are seeing that people who are transgender, people who already have very little rights in their societies, although there's a spectrum depending on how developed society you live in, are unable to access jobs. They are unable to access basic rights. On our side, we think that you give them more rights, because even if you have to resort to a sex industry, then at the very least, you are able to access the rights to a job, the rights to a stable income, the rights to basic needs.
You think that monetary finance is more important than their emotional harm, psychological harm, their physical harm that may come with prostitution and sex tourism?
Okay, so first of all, with prostitution and sex tourism, even if they undergo emotional and physical harm, we think that what actually happens is that as a result of sex tourism being further legitimized within the country, then these things can be first of all better regulated, and the images of these people can become slightly better in the eyes of the community. Although Hans did bring up a good point on the fact that yes, within these places, you'll be seen as unique, you'll be seen as an object, things like that. We think that in time, you put forward more organic change for the people within these countries, because within these communities, because they are able to access mediums of having a voice. We're not saying that the industry in itself is the medium of having a voice. We're saying that as people in the communities become more popular, they become celebrities, they become well-known figures within the industry or within the country that they're in, and as they become richer, that means that they at least have an avenue via social media, via popularity, by influence to tell the people around them, tell the communities that they're in, that they are normal people, that trans people are not weird, they're not unique. And on to the second point. So, who makes the is commodification a worthwhile trade-off for acceptance? So let's look at the worst and best case scenario. So the worst case scenario is that you're seen as a weird object, that tourists look at you as something that you cannot see at home, and that generally you're worse off. So we first rebuttal. So if you're seen as a weird object, you think this happens on both sides anyway. Either way, you're going to be discriminated. Either way, you're not normal because you're transgender. At least in this side, at the very least, you're seen as someone that contributes positively to the industry. Because at least you are a money or earning individual who contributes to the GDP of the country. And on the case of the worst case scenario, so we think that at the very least, having this avenue provides this cost. Because even if you're mistreated within the sex industry, it makes you more, it exposes you further to important individuals or important communities within a society or within the world. NGOs, etc., can use your plight as a further battle against for the trans community, and are further recognizing the problems that are faced by the trans community as well as the people on the ground. So in conclusion, we think that side opposition further betters the life of trans people, because we at least provide them with a medium they can use to further their cause. Thank you.
the only job that transgenders can ever have and ever deserve are jobs like prostitution and jobs in the sex industry of itself. We think it's untrue that transgenders are individuals who never got education or never got the proper education to be qualified for these kind of jobs. We think it's abhorrent that they want to push these transgenders into a world where they only get accepted in jobs like prostitution and commodification in order for them to get money. I think it's a problem and a problem inside opposition. I think that opposition was also narrowing the debate down to only places where transgenders do not have proper education and transgenders will never have the chance to get a proper job in the first place. So I have two issues with the debate. Number one, will commodification give them a better life? Number two, whether or not they'll get objectified at the end of the day. So let's look at my first issue on whether or not these commodifications will give them a better life in the first place. Because both opposition side came up with the same thing and hopes that these individuals will only pay for them to get proper jobs or to get a proper living is for them to be in industries like the prostitution industry, like sex industry, where they have to sell their bodies in order for them to get the proper money. In that untrue. In that these individuals like KTJ MaMa are good enough to be like politicians or people who are worth being in high positions or CEOs. We think that the problem is status quo is that we never acknowledge them as individuals who are good enough for these kinds of industries where they're able to have the CEOs of high positions. Then at your side, we perpetuate that stereotype that these individuals are of the same standard as those animals in the zoo. That because we go to that place and all we want to see is entertainment, and these individuals are the same as animals that we see in the zoo. That we only want to see them as objects and never as individuals who can be on the same standard as us. They can be doctors, they can be lawyers, they can be teachers just like us. We think that the only thing they can do that is, yes, agree that individuals, these individuals are always be discriminated no matter what, but at least we give them the hope and life for them to be able to get proper jobs, to be able to get out of the stigma that the only job that they can have is prostitution. Because you give them that, because when you have these qualifications, you give those people, these interviewers or employers to say that you already have the jobs of your own, which are prostitution. Why don't you just go back to those kind of jobs and get those jobs at the end of the day? Because you do not belong to our industry, you do not belong to our companies, hence you are not supposed to be here. So we think that the point in which we have this commodification is a leeway for these individuals because who will never want to have these transgenders in their industry to reject them and say that you are not qualified. Even if you have a PhD, even if you have the top notch of all the transgenders or whatnot, we will never accept you because you belong to the prostitution. You belong to those kinds of industries, and you do not belong to these industries. We think that in these situations, the only thing that in order for us to the only thing that you're doing to these individuals are worsening their situation and giving them a place where they belong, which is not something acceptable for them. Go.
The stigma will change in maybe 100 years. So while I'm waiting for that, should I read that false hope and not work at all?
We do not think that individuals will not get jobs just because you do not give them prostitution, a job that the only alternative that they have is prostitution. We think that they are able to get jobs, but the problem is that they do not get high-ranking jobs. So if that is really the case, but if it's really true that individuals will never get jobs, we will sacrifice that in a little amount of time in order for us not to worsen the situation and stigmatize them even more and have things like LGBT values, which is something that has brought up but was really neglected by their side. So let's look at proper progression, because they told us that using that commodifications will give them progression because we'll help them with the progression because they are seen as individuals who are accepted. Number one, start closing government's really told you that the point at which you put them at the same pedestal as an animal, the same pedestal as something as an object, they are never able to see them at the same standard and they're never able to see as somebody who is as qualified as a doctor. That's the problem in your side, something we needed to deal with, which we did not. Number two, we think that the proper progression is when these individuals are actually be able to be deemed as individuals who can be as qualified. So as long as these forms of qualifications exist, they will never be seen as individuals who are qualified or should be at the same pedestal. So why is this so detrimental? Especially when there's a sound progression, when individuals do think that these individuals are getting proper jobs, are getting proper jobs and they can sustain themselves, the problem is that people will not do international relations with international countries that actually support these transgender can never intervene into these countries because these countries say that, oh, we already have commodities, we already have jobs for them, we already have prostitution for them. There's no longer the need for us to make a new job for them. Hence, other countries can never purchase these
Number two, then nobody fights for them anymore because they say that, oh, this situation is already solved. There's no need to fight for the transgender. There's no need to fight for the LGBT movement. Because there's a problem in their side that they needed to deal with that they did not deal with. So what is the outcome of all of this, right? We're not saying that the burden on our side is not to prove to you that individuals will get jobs. Individuals will have a sustainable life. But to prove to you that their side will have this commodification, the scale of harm is even worse. Because you push them further to the other end and saying that instead of them having the slight chance of them having a job, you push them to have less likely able to have a job because people objectify them even more. Because you place them on a pedestal as an animal.
So in places where they're already educated and access to these kind of things, they tend to be more accepted in societies. So let's look at societies where they don't even have access to education, where sex tourism is the only, where trans tourism is the only avenue that they possibly have.
Yeah, but we have the sex tourism as an avenue. You immediately stigmatize them and say that the only place where the only job that they should have is sex tourism, is in the sex tourism, right? So even if we were to say, even if it was true that your model was true, that in our worst case scenario, that individuals will never get jobs because they are in places where they do not have proper education, then fine. We will say that in that short period of time, we will sacrifice certain individuals in order for us to have proper proper jobs for them and build more confidence for them to come out, right? So we think that we also think that both opposition sides also told us that organic change is already happening, but it's very, very slow. So assuming that organic change is already happening, we do not think there's a need for you to push them to the other end and stop this organic change from happening. So we think that the objectification is also another issue. When you coerce these individuals by telling them that the only job that you deserve is the prostitution, and it's prostitution and such. So hence you tell them that the only job that they can do and they're qualified to do is these jobs, and you coerce these individuals to do so. And when you do so, they also stop them from having the confidence to actually climb up the ladder that they should be able to climb.
The better life for transgenders is clearly something that both sides are trying to fight for. So to begin with, I'm going to I'll start with a few rebuttals. Then I'll talk about the main areas of contention in this debate, showing why side opposition takes the case and including the trade-offs that we're willing to make. So first of all, rebuttals. They spoke about how when you commoditize the transgenders, it forces them into becoming prostitutes and makes them think that this is the only job that they're capable of, and it makes them feel like they're forced into their course, as they said. So I'm going to rebut this case. So the thing is, and they narrowed it down to less economically developed countries. So first of all, let's speak about in more economically developed countries. The thing is, it's already more accepted in these countries, so it's not a problem. In these countries, it's a lot easier for them to get a job anyway. For example, like transgender, it's a lot easier for them to. It's more accepted anyway. So the problem, it's right. The problem is focused on the lower economically developed countries. And the thing is, they said that these are poor-paying jobs, like being prostitutes and stuff are poor-paying jobs. But first of all, even if they are poor-paying jobs, we do not regret this because at least it is one form of a job. So if they're in these they have low income, at least they have some form of income if there's no alternative. If finding no alternative in how these transgenders in low-income countries can get a source of income if in either case they are not accepted by society. So at least in our case, they have some form of income. And furthermore, if tourism supports it, these industries will become more high profile. And the thing is that not all these jobs are low paid. It's possible, like when they become more high profile, they can actually become more high paid, become supportive of these people, and they become like more celebrated. The second rebuttal is what they said on discourse. So they spoke of how their side is better for acceptance, because it has discourse and if you want acceptance, I'm going to tell you why their side will not promote acceptance. They fail to prove how their discourse is going to help acceptance. Whereas on our side, my speaker already told you how it gives them the shows and so on, give them a medium to speak out. And the thing is, the tourists can actually see the problem. So it breaks out of the echo chamber of this narrow-mindedness. It's out in the open, it's not kept in the shadows. People are more likely to see whatever problems there are. And when they actually see them, they can see that they are in fact people like them. They can see that they are people and they're not animals. So when they see them there, it's a lot easier for them to accept that they are in fact people, yes.
Even if the amount that you get from these jobs are able to sustain them on a day-to-day basis, why is it okay to trade off the general progression of the trans community as a whole? Because you dehumanize them and perpetuate the stereotype that they are objects that the general society can use.
As I just said, it promotes, actually, you feel, how does your side make it better to accept that? You said your side has discourse, but as I just told you how that doesn't work. Because on our side, at least, they can see that there are people. So the main areas of contention here are there's three things: the stakeholders, which side is better acceptance, and which side is better standard of living for the LGBT, the trans community. So in terms of the stakeholders, right, the only victims here are the trans, as we all accepted. So briefly, I'm just going to say that if both sides, if the trans do not end up better off on either side, since they fail to show how they're better off on their side, even if they're not better off on our side, in the sense of at least the government and tourism industry and citizens can benefit from whatever monetary income. So therefore we take that. Now onto proving which side is actually better for the trans community. Second point, acceptance, and third point, standard of living. So for acceptance, on their side, they say they look at as objects, but how they fail to say how any alternative will help and did not prove any sort of coherent alternative or say why the status quo will be worse off. So what I'm saying is that in status quo, at least it's better off than the alternative of being kept in the shadows. As our side has said, when they're out in the open, they have a medium of communicating with people, and they have an avenue to show people the problems. They have a way of showing that they really are just people. And then thirdly, the standard of living. So if on either side it's hard to get jobs, if in higher economic areas it's accepted, then the problem is in lower economic areas. And in these areas, if they can't get a job on their side either, at least on our side, so the trade-off is that even if they're not fully accepted, they can still have some income and they can still live. And they can live in a community of fellow transgenders when they're accepted with other like-minded people around them, as I think our mentioned. Yes.
Can you tell us how sustainable this industry is for the trans people? Because looks fade in the industry. How sustainable is it?
Looks fade. Sorry, I don't understand your point. So I'm running out of time, so I'm just gonna move on to the trade-off. Essentially, both sides want what's better off for the transgenders, and I've shown how the side government in the status quo is better than the alternative. But so even if there's no movement, on our side at least, the government and so on will benefit. And the other trade-off is that at least if the acceptance is not better on our side, because they did not prove how standard of living would be better on their side, or how standard of living is worse off on our side. So clearly, standard of living for them, having a possible source of income is better on our side. So if the acceptance of the LGBT community is the trade-off, then we're willing to make this trade-off so that they have a source of income and can survive. Thank you.